with this party, the idea of getting to the finish line by almost any means is a dominant mode of thinking amongst a good number of their strategists.
They used tactics that went from the ones that were completely against the traditions of this country to the almost criminal in some cases, to those cases where people ended up getting charged and guilty pleas were entered.
And so at some level, whatever they're trying to do only needs to be good enough for the next election, then they'll weather the storm.
In anticipation of the 42nd general election, the Harper government tabled Bill C-23, better known as the Fair Elections Act.
As an American coming up to Canada, there's very little about Canadian politics that shocks me because I've seen it in the US, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm a character from a dystopic sci-fi novel coming in from the future and warning people, don't go there, I've seen how bad it is. Because a lot of things that happen in the US, bad things, make their way across the border and seep into here. So usually I've seen it before, but frankly, Bill C-23, the Fair Elections Act, shocked even me.
So my response to the Fair Elections Act is complete outrage. The genesis of the act was, in fact, the robocalls cases we're talking about here. And we need an act that would do that to prevent it from happening again. And so you now leap forward, and the Fair Elections Act that we got from the Conservative Party had nothing whatsoever to do with the robocalls cases.
To the leader of the official opposition, Thomas Mulcair, it went beyond politics.
And we said, we've got to fight this thing tooth and nail. So for example, we shut down all participation, because it requires unanimous consent, all participation in trips by parliamentary committees. We used whatever tools we had as the official opposition to send a very strong signal to the Conservative government.
At first reading, the Minister of State Poilievre argued the bill's provisions were necessary to eradicate systemic voter fraud, the illegal practice of a voter casting more than one ballot.
We know from study after study after study that there's no significant voter fraud in the United States or in Canada, and yet it enables certain politicians to come forward with legislation saying they're trying to prevent voter fraud, when clearly what they're trying to do is disenfranchise portions of the population, and young people are high up on that list.
Poilievre got it exactly wrong. Number one, there's no evidence that any of this has ever happened, that voters are trying to vote more than once. And Stephen Harper has a clever line. He said it a few times in the House. Canadians want to make sure there are secret votes, not secret voters.
And the goal is crystal clear. There are some people they don't want to have vote.
Disproportionately, youth, First Nations, and impoverished Canadians.
And those people are the ones that they've identified who are not likely to vote Conservative.
They had the crazy idea, and they used the expression, the Conservatives said it was a conflict of interest for Elections Canada to be doing advertising to encourage people to vote. What an absurd idea. The people in charge of your elections should be encouraging people to vote and using whatever tools they have. And we should be providing them with more tools, not fewer.
They have their greatest leverage at the polls when fewer people vote.
The Harper government sought to end the nation's time-honored practice of vouching. Vouching allows a person of legal voting age, but without proof of identity, to vote if advocated by another voter with required identification.
So the more I followed this and the more I got into it, the more concerned I became.
Brent Rathgeber, at the time MP from the Alberta riding of Edmonton-St. Albert, had resigned from the Conservative Party caucus and sat as an independent.
Became schooled that it was very important to many groups who, for whatever reason, may not have requisite ID to prove where they live.
But getting rid of vouching, when you already made it so complicated for people, was, I could see, a way of reducing voter turnout.
The blunder that the Conservatives made was on trying to make it so onerous to try and actually go and vote that everyone could understand that.
people were coming in and saying, this doesn't work. You can't do this. You're making it more difficult for a lot of people to vote. It's the opposite that you should be doing.
The country's most respected legal minds and academics submitted petitions citing the Fair Elections Act in breach of the nation's Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
And all of a sudden, everyone looked at the act, and all sorts of other things came out. There were about a dozen of them in total that made elections more unfair. And they paid a political price for it.
It was unanimous against this bill. Everyone started to prove that this was about the Conservatives cheating.
The Fair Elections Act was just yet another example of the Conservatives doing very similar things to what George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Karl Rove did in the United States in terms of making technical changes that are buried in huge bills, difficult to understand, but all aimed at undermining accountability and furthering the interests of the ruling party.
The bill was universally censured as an American Republican adaptation of legalized voter suppression.